Hey folks, welcome everyone to our November webinar brought to you by streamingchurch.tv and Missional Marketing. My name is Phil Thompson, and the name of our webinar is called Enhance Your Church's Visibility from Pews to Pixels, Mastering Church Marketing in the Digital Age. And we have a special guest today, Bart Blair, who we will introduce here in a moment. He's going to probably talk more specifically about how you can enhance your church's visibility in Google. And this is a free webinar. It will be recorded, but we encourage you to hang around a little bit because we have a special offer coming up here in towards the end of the webinar, and we will also have some Q&A as well after Bart talks a little bit about his presentation here. I'd like to just, first of all, before we get into this, I just want you to meet our host. We'll probably be behind the scenes as Bart will be doing most of the talking, but we'll try to interrupt him at times to get him off track. But we're a company that has been serving churches now since 2001 and been doing a variety of things. Mostly what we do is streaming video with streamingchurch.tv, but we have other things like dailydive365.com, which we can talk a little bit about later. But I'd like to just take a moment to introduce our CEO. His name is Steve Lacey. He's the founder and
Good.
CEO. Hi, Steve.
Good morning.
And we're glad to have you here. Steve's been involved in ministry for many years on church boards and leadership teams and all that stuff. Interestingly enough, he has not been a pastor. Everybody on this panel here has been involved in pastoral ministry at one point or another. So Steve was a smart one. He didn't get into pastoral ministry. Michael Gray is also here. He does tech support for streamingchurch.tv as well as some other products. And of course, here's me. I do customer care and I work on our blogs and our Church Solutions podcast, as well as tech support. And our special guest is Bart Blair. He's the executive director of Missional Impact. Bart, how are you today?
I'm doing very well and glad to be hanging out with you guys today.
Yeah, so tell us, before we get into the presentation, just give us a brief little bio of you. I know you also are involved in pastoral ministry as well.
Yeah, come January of 2025, I will have been in pastoral ministry for about 23 years. I'm still in pastoral ministry. It's just not my vocation. I'm actually, I live in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, which is the area I grew up in, but I actually moved away for a number of years, was involved in a couple of different church plants, and I'm actually part of a church planting team in the Dallas-Fort Worth area now, helping to plant another new church here. I've been on the team at Missional Marketing since 2018. Just in my current role as the director of Missional Impact this year, that was something that was new. I kind of started as just sort of a part-time consultant for churches in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, helping them with digital marketing and SEO services. My role expanded to a full-time role. Then I took over sort of leading all of our coach team with missional marketing, all of our coaches, all of our consultants working with churches. And then earlier this year, I joined the executive team to really help be sure that the products and the services that we're offering churches are meeting their needs, that it's actually moving the needle in the areas that they want it to move the needle in. And I'm technically, I guess, the brand director for missional marketing. We actually, our company is made up of three separate companies. One is called the Church Communications Group. One is Missional Marketing, which is kind of the original company. And then we also have a company called AI for Churches, where we actually provide AI consulting and coaching, and we actually have a product for churches as well in the space of AI. So that's who I am. That's my role. I'm married. I've got some kids. I've got some grandkids. I'm actually a new grandparent. Like a month, as of a month ago, became a grandparent. So that's kind of a new way of introducing myself. But yeah, lots of good things going on in my life. And I just love the opportunity to be able to speak into what churches are doing to try to help them leverage their digital platforms to reach more people for Jesus.
Yeah. Well, we're excited about having you on today. You know, it used to be in the old days, if you wanted to really reach out and be progressive in your marketing, you just found a good church sign and you lit it up at night. But things have changed because we are in the digital age. And today we're going to have you talk a little bit about how churches can enhance their visibility. People need to be able to find them online, find them on Google and those kind of things. So I'm going to turn this thing over to you and let you share your screen, and we'll have a Q&A at the end. People can type in their questions even now if they want in chat. And so we'll get to those at the very end. So take it away, Bart.
All right, I will do that. Well, again, I appreciate you all hanging out with us today, or those of you that might be watching this in post live in a recording of some sort. I'm going to go through a slide deck today, which I want to let you know that this will be available to you in a PDF format after the webinar. So as you're going through here, if you see things every time I do this, I see people taking screenshots or taking pictures of their of the screen. You don't have to do that. We'll send you a PDF, so all of this content, all of these details will be available to you, which will hopefully help you take some steps forward in your church's digital presence. And you're right, Phil, as it relates specifically to Google. Google has the market share for search engines on the internet. And so when we're talking about SEO for churches, we're talking about really all search engines. That includes Bing, Yahoo, DuckDuckGo, whatever search engine you might like to use. But obviously, with Google having the market share, they sort of set the tone for what everybody else needs to follow. And so that's specifically what we're going to be addressing today. As a church, it probably won't surprise you that the vast majority of people who visit your church for the very first time are going to some way make their way to your church facility, to your church building, or to your meeting location using a Google search of some sort. It might be a map search. It might be just a simple Google search, but it's very unlikely that anyone is actually going to show up and find you in person without first having found you and checked you out online. The key here, though, is just to make sure that they can actually find you when they're trying to find you online. And so what we're going to be doing today is kind of talking through the variety of ways that we can actually leverage our website, our church's website, and SEO tools and practices to make sure that we're intersecting with the people that we want to intersect with. At Missional Marketing, when we talk about communications, church communications, we break our audience into three distinct groups. The first ring of communication, the inner circle, those are your people. Those are people that if your church is, city community church, they may attend your weekend services on a regular basis, or they may just simply be your Christmas and Easter people. But there's a very good chance that you have them in your church management software. You've got their email address. You've got their cell phone number. You're emailing them from time to time. You're texting them. They're probably following you on your social media accounts. In most churches, I would say probably 80 to 90% of our communication energy is poured into ring one. How do we make sure that the people that are in our church know what they're supposed to know, when they're supposed to know it, and respond to the calls to action that we want them to respond to in a way that's timely? And so it does take a lot of our energy, just because Sunday's always coming. There are always events and activities that need to be communicated. And so that does take a big part of our communications energy. But we also have two other audiences that we're constantly trying to communicate with. We just need to be a little more intentional about it. Ring two are people who are in your community who are actively looking for a church. Now, these may be people who are already followers of Jesus, or they may just be kicking tires of faith for the very first time in their lives, but they're getting online and they're Googling churches near me, church in my city, church in Springfield, best churches near me, churches close to me. Whatever the Googling language is that they use, they're actively looking for a church. And there are a variety of reasons that those people could be looking for a church. Maybe they're new to the community. I live in Texas where everybody grew up in church, and then they hit their college years and stopped attending church. And then later on, they get married and have kids and think, maybe we should go to church. And so they get online and they start looking for churches. They might be Googling your church by name because they've heard of your church from a friend or a family member or a colleague at work, or they may simply be doing what we would call a discovery search, a search that would lead them to your church by way of discovering. The third audience is really the biggest audience in our community, ring three. Those are people in your community that are looking for help, but not necessarily looking for a church. They're trying to DIY some problem on Google and YouTube. It might be marriage issues, financial issues, parenting issues, grief, anxiety, worry, vocational, you name it. These are what we would refer to as felt needs. Many of our churches actually have ministries that address the felt needs that people are searching for. A lot of our churches are actually preaching sermons on the content that people are searching for. It's very, very rare that I see a church that has actively built an SEO strategy to intersect with those people when they are searching for those types of things. And so that's some of the stuff I want to shed light on for you today, is to say, if you have ministries, if you have sermon content, if you have opportunities to connect with people in your community, who are looking for help and looking for hope, but not necessarily looking for a church, there are ways that we can show up in those search results. Now, search engine optimization, obviously, it all starts with the search. There are two different ways that we can actually attract people to our church website. One is through organic search results, and one is through paid search results. And what we're going to focus on in this conversation today is really the organic side. But let me give you the analogy that I typically use when I talk about organic and paid and how those two work. If you were going to bake a pie, got Thanksgiving coming up here pretty soon, and some of you are going to be baking a pie, and perhaps it's an apple pie. And if you're going to bake an apple pie, one of the ingredients that you absolutely have to have is apples, right? Got to have apples. You have two options for how you acquire apples. The first option is you drive down the road to the Kroger or the Tom Thumb, the HEB, or the whatever grocery store is in your community. HEB, that's a Texas thing. If you're from Texas, you'll know what I'm talking about. If you don't, you don't know what I'm talking about. But you drive down to the market and you buy apples. You buy exactly what you need based on the recipe that you have with the budget that you have allocated to buy those apples. It's instant. It's instantaneous. The other option is to plant some apple seeds, grow some trees, cultivate an orchard, and then eventually you'll have apples out the wazoo, more apples than you know what to do with. Now, both of these are great options for acquiring apples, but one of them is obviously a short-term play and it's temporary. One is a long-term play and it's actually very, very fruitful over a long period of time. Buying apples at the grocery store is like buying clicks to your website, whether that's Google search ads, using the Google ad grant, running Facebook and Instagram ads, running Google display or YouTube ads. We pay for advertisement placements, we get clicks, and we get immediate traffic to our website. You can launch a Facebook campaign or a Google search ad campaign today and have new visitors on your website before the end of today. But as soon as you turn the cash flow off, you stop the traffic coming as it relates to that paid traffic. So you only get what you actually pay for. With organic traffic, you know the old saying, when was the best time to plant a tree? 10 years ago or today? With SEO, it's a much longer term play. It's like planting seeds to cultivate an orchard that over time is going to reap long-term benefits with more new visitors coming to your website on a regular basis that you don't have to pay for. You have to pay for the time and the creativity and the investment up front to have the content, to have it optimized, but the long-term benefit certainly outweighs the short-term benefit of paid traffic. There are two different types of SEO that we're going to kind of talk about today. One is local SEO and one is on-page SEO. And again, both of these are long-term plays. Local SEO is a little bit different than on-page SEO, and it's the one that I think is the bigger mystery for most churches. Most of the time when people hear SEO, they're thinking about the content on their website and whether or not Google is crawling that and returning it in search results. But local SEO is actually the way that Google interprets searches related to brick and mortar locations. So if I'm searching for a chiropractor near me or a Chinese restaurant near me or an auto mechanic near me, Google understands that I'm not looking for a Wikipedia page about Chinese food, but I'm actually looking for a map and locations and reviews of those restaurants. If I go online and I Google dentist near me, I'm going to get a local pack and a map. If I Google Brad Pitt, I'm not getting a map. I'm going to get an IMDb page, a Wikipedia page, and a whole bunch of articles about Brad Pitt. And Google can discern the difference between those types of searches, or at least it attempts to in most cases. For churches, we want to show up in those local searches. This is how we rank and show up and intersect with people who are in that ring 2 audience, people in your geo-targeted area who are actively looking for a church. Churches near me, churches in Dallas, best church near me, church close to me, whatever it is that they're searching, we want to show up in those searches, and that is local SEO. And you see there are some specific things that help us rank higher in Google Maps and in the Google Local Pack. There's actually 6 things that determine your local search rankings. And I have the list here on the screen. 3 of them are red, 3 of them are green. The 3 that are red are things that you cannot control. The things that are green are things you can control. The 3 things you can't control, number 1 is proximity to your campus when the person conducts the search. If I'm in your parking lot and I search church near me, you should be number 1. If I'm 5 miles away, you're unlikely to be number 1. The closer I am to your campus, the more likely I'm going to rank higher. Regardless of all other things, Google does use proximity on the map as one of its primary determining factors in search rankings, because obviously if you're searching church near me or churches near me, Google's going to use that as a key factor. The second thing you can't control is the number of churches in the area. So if you live in an area like I do in the Dallas-Fort Worth area where there is a church on every corner, it's much, much more difficult for you to rank high in the rankings because the space is more competitive. Obviously, we're not competing in the kingdom principles here, but yeah, it's fair to say that we need to compete for those top spots in the local search rankings. And I'm going to walk you through the things that you can do to rank higher than perhaps some of the other churches in your area. But the third thing you can't control is what other churches are actually doing to improve their own local SEO. If they're doing items 4, 5, and 6 on this list, and you're not doing items 4, 5, and 6 on this list, you'll never outrank them, right? Unless the person is just simply closer to your campus. Number 4, the first thing that you can control is having local schema markup or structure data on your website. Some website platforms such as Squarespace have this built in. If you're on a WordPress website, there's a plugin that you can use that'll actually add this code to your website, or you can simply hire a marketing or SEO company to write that code and put it on your website for you. This is specific name, address, phone number code on your website that the search engines are looking for to determine that you are who you say you are and where you say you are. And that's the first piece of data that the search engines are looking for. The second thing that you can control is your Google business profile. You need to have a Google business profile. It needs to be claimed, and it needs to be optimized for the types of searches that you want to show up in. Oh, and then the second piece is you need to use it. Why do you need to use it? Because Google has created a tool that it would essentially like to replace your website. That's why when you oftentimes do a search, your Google business profile comes up before your church website might actually come up. The way you use your Google business profile is make sure you're updating photos regularly. You're creating posts. You're adding events. You're soliciting reviews and responding to those reviews. All of the tools that are inside the Google business profile, the more active you are in using those, the more that signals to the Google algorithm that you're using their tool and that you are a business that is in business. If you're a business that's in business and you're using that tool, then people are more likely going to find you in search results. As a side note here, reviews matter. And one of the reasons that reviews matter is more about human psychology than it is the Google algorithm. Because if I search chiropractor near me, and I have 3 options that come up on my screen, and one has 12 reviews, and one has 120 reviews, and one has 1,200 reviews, I could care less that the one that has 12 reviews is 5-star and the one that has 1,200 reviews is 4.6 star. I'm more likely going to click on the one that has 1,200 reviews because in human psychology, this tells me it's a much more legitimate business because they simply have more reviews. I was just recently talking to my son-in-law and daughter who just recently made me a grandparent. And they were talking about being in a city where they had some medical appointments and they were looking for restaurants to try. And we were talking about it and they're like, yeah, if the restaurant didn't have more than like 300 or 400 reviews, we didn't even click to see whether or not people liked it, even if it had all 5-star reviews. So it is important that you're getting reviews. Having more active reviews or more frequent reviews in your Google business profile signals to the algorithm that you're in business. But the more reviews you have, it actually communicates to the human psychology that you are a business that is in business or that you are a church that is more legitimate. Finally, the 6th point on my list here, which is the third thing you can control, are what we call citation listings. Having a citation listing and a citation profile that's robust will help your local search rankings. Citation listings are essentially directory listings that Google cross-references when it's verifying that you are who you say you are and where you say you are. So the first thing that Google notes is your name, address, phone number, and your local schema markup. Then it compares that to your Google business profile, and it's looking for exact matching data. Our COO at Missional Marketing says Google likes matchy-matchy. The more it matches, the better you will be. And then Google is cross-referencing hundreds of other directories on the internet to see if they have actually had you listed and if those directory listings are claimed. Some of those are directory listings that you'd be familiar with, things like Yelp or Yellow Pages, the Chamber of Commerce in your local community. These are things that we're typically aware of. Most of the time, we don't know that that helps us, but we should have directory listings in those directories and claim them and make sure that the data matches exactly what's in your local schema markup and exactly what's on your Google business profile. But there are also these directory listings that are very obscure that for some reason Google gives a lot of authority to. Silex, Data USA. There's a website called HotFrog. You should go find HotFrog. I think it's hotfrog.com and search to see if your church is in it. There's a very good chance that your church is in it and that you've never actually claimed your listing, because HotFrog is a directory that's constantly looking for businesses to add to its own directory listing. This is one of the top 30 directory listings that Google gives authority to. And if you're in that directory listing, it gives you more authority. If you're not in that directory listing, then you have less authority. So a citation profile is really, really tantamount to having higher search rankings. If you're doing these things, if you have the local schema markup, you have an active Google business profile that's claimed and optimized, and you're building this citation profile and claiming your citations, you will see your local search rankings move up. And in often cases, you will be able to outperform in those search rankings other churches in your area that might be bigger. People might even be closer to that campus, but you can outshine those in those local search rankings by just following these basic local SEO rules. I'm going to get into some local SEO stuff at the end of this webinar, so I'm going to keep moving for now, just to keep things rolling. All right, let's talk a little bit about on-page SEO. No, let's not talk. Let's let Bart talk. Bart's going to talk some about on-page SEO, or organic SEO is what some people like to refer to it. How Google works. In most people in their mind, Google, you get online, you do a search. As soon as you do a search, Google is scouring the entire interweb, and that it is bringing back you the search results that you were looking for. Okay, that's the way that most people think that Google works. Now, there are 3 stages of a Google search. The first one is actual crawling. So Google is, while we're sitting here doing nothing on the internet, Google is actually sending out crawlers that are reading websites, reading the text, the images, the videos, and any content found on these websites. And then it's indexing them. It's creating a list and organizing that list based on the way that those pages and those websites have been optimized. And finally, when you do the search, Google serves those content results that you have searched for. So the best way that I know how to explain this is, imagine your grandmother's old recipe card box that she kept on her kitchen counter. And it's time for a potluck, church potluck, and she's looking for her best Jello salad recipe or whatever it is that she's going to bring. She already has a collection of recipes. She already knows what's in them. She knows the ingredients. They're tried and true. They're trustworthy. And she's going to go over to her index box and she's going to scroll through them and look for the recipe that's going to best match what she wants to bring to the potluck. When you are doing a Google search, Google is not actually searching the internet in that moment. It's searching its own index box of content that it has predetermined is relevant for the search results that you're looking for. And so this is one of the things that's really important that we note, is that we have to make sure, number one, that our website is structured in a way that Google knows how we want our content indexed, that Google knows and understands what we're trying to communicate to our audience, which means we need to follow some proper optimization rules. And then we need to understand that what we put on our website today might not actually show up in a search result for quite some time later, because Google's going to have to index it, throw it in its index box, and then we have to wait to see if people are actually searching and Google considers our content to be authoritative. If you have a mobile device, or many of you are probably on a computer right now, or your mobile device, and you have the ability to do this, I want you to just search history of the Easter egg. Actually, there's 2 thes in my search there. Don't put 2 thes in there. Just type history of the Easter egg. And I'm going to give you a second to do that. I'm going to do it myself. Now, I did the search in Google, and if you did the search in Google, more than likely your search results might not match exactly mine, but they're going to be pretty close. The first result that I have is an AI overview, which is pretty normal these days in Google. We're getting an AI overview at the top. The second thing I got is Wikipedia, and the third is history.com. Well, we would both understand that those are pretty authoritative websites on the internet. You're typically going to get Wikipedia, and because you've searched for the history of something, history.com makes sense. But then if you continue scrolling, you might see somewhere in the top 3, 4, 5 results an article from Chase Oaks Church, which is a church in Plano, Texas. And one might wonder, how in the world does Chase Oaks Church have the third or fourth most authoritative article on the internet as it relates to the history of the Easter egg? Well, I work pretty closely with this church, and I can tell you that they wrote this article about 4 or 5 years ago. They optimized it for search, and then they just sat and let the search engines do what the search engines do, which is crawl it, index it. And here's the thing. It's a really well-written article. They followed all the SEO principles that I'm going to walk you through here in just a moment. And the end result is Google has decided that this is an authoritative website. And what's really interesting is that in 2023, this is last year, this church had over 19,000 new visitors on their website that entered the website on that particular article. Now, granted, this is global traffic, so it's not necessarily going to naturally equate to 19,000 people learning about a church that they could perhaps attend. But this church is leveraging this every year now, recognizing that they're getting 15 to 20,000 organic visitors to their website. So they just update that blog post every year with their current Easter service information on it during the Easter season, because they realize that there will be some people in the Dallas-Fort Worth area that might actually land on the article who might be interested in learning more about their church, certainly learning more about their church online experience if they don't live in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. You'll notice the next article there. These are the top 3 entry points of their website. They had 36,000 entered to their homepage. That's the top. The third is an article called 5 Free Christmas Light Displays in DFW for 2023. This was actually an article that they paid for traffic for. So the 13,000 new users that they had on their website at the Christmas season of 2023 was paid search advertising, which was a great strategy, because people were not looking for a church. They were looking for something that people in the community, they knew that people in the community would be looking for something like that. You'll notice the 5th article down there is 10 interesting facts about Jesus that might surprise you. 13,000 organic visits to the website. These are new visitor clicks to the website in 2023. And you'll also notice all those numbers are green, indicating that that's up from the previous year. Okay. And that's the magic of planting those seeds and cultivating that orchard, is that over time, when you have authoritative content on your website that's optimized for search, you get much, much more traffic on your website, new visitor traffic. Let me talk through the top 6 factors for on-page SEO, the rules that we need to follow when we're creating this type of content. The first is mobile responsiveness. This shouldn't come as a surprise to us that if you looked at your Google Analytics, depending on what part of the country you live in, you're going to see somewhere between 60 and probably 85% of your new visitors to your website are on a mobile device. Most of it's going to be a phone. Occasionally, you'll see tablet content. Your website needs to be mobile responsive, and it actually probably needs to be designed for mobile first. I'm on a lot of church websites, and I find a lot of church websites, while they are mobile responsive, the mobile responsivity or the user experience on the website is really designed first and foremost for a desktop. And though the mobile experience isn't terrible, it wasn't the first design. And I was actually on a call with a church last week that just redesigned their website. And actually, it looks quite terrible on a desktop, but when you're on mobile, it's phenomenal. And they have 70% of their new visitor traffic on their website is mobile. And they're like, we'll sacrifice the user experience, or at least the visual aspect of it, for the sake of having a really, really well done mobile website. So you want to make sure that most of the time when you're using WordPress or Squarespace, you're doing your website updates on your desktop. And that's the way that we tend to design and do our layout. We need to make sure that it's mobile responsive. The second thing is page speed. And this is another issue. Google likes fast websites, and users like fast websites, especially if they're on their phone. If they're on their phone and it takes more than 2 seconds to load, they're probably assuming that the website's not going to load and they'll hit back. This negatively impacts your SEO. There are a variety of reasons that page speed might be an issue for your website. One of which is you might have bloated CSS or JavaScript that needs to be minimized. It could be that you have images or videos that are too large and take too long to load. In some cases, that might be your website host. I work with a ministry that we recently had to move our website host because the host that we had it on, it was just way too slow. It was killing the user experience for people because it was taking 3, 4, 5 seconds for a page to load. And we moved to a new website host, which is a hassle, a huge, huge hassle. But now pages load in less than a second versus a 4 or 5 second load. And we had paid somebody to actually go through and optimize all of our code, optimize our images, and it didn't speed up the website. And we realized the only option was to try a different website host, and that solved our problem. The next thing are title tags, which we would call primarily H1 and H2. H3 does matter as well, but H1 and H2 are the primary. Now, most web designers, especially in the church space, a lot of our communications directors or people who are managing church websites, they see the H1 and the H2 as being the font size, which it is. But it's more than just the font size. It's actually the code that Google is reading to decide what content is on your website and how it needs to be indexed. So we want to make sure that our H1 and our H2 headings communicate effectively and clearly to the search engines what content we have on our page. Title tags, typically no more than 2 H1 tags. Tell the search engines what your page is about and be clear. Clarity beats creativity all the time. And I'll give you an example. Your children's ministry at your church might be called Ultra God Kids. I don't know. I just made that up. I hope it's not, because that's a pretty bad name for a children's ministry, but it's called Ultra God Kids. And if that is your H1 heading, guarantee that Google has zero idea how to index that page because nobody knows what Ultra God Kids is. But if your church is called City Church and your H1 heading is Kids Ministry at City Church, now Google knows exactly how to index your page. Okay. You typically don't want to have more than a couple of H1 tags. Sometimes 3 is okay, but the more you put in there, the more complex it makes it for the search engines to know exactly how to index the page. The second is H2 tags. H2 tags expand on the page content. And I would typically say if you, I'll use this as an example. I have a book sitting here on my desk. The title of the book is Grief Makes Christmas Complicated. Okay. That's the H1 heading. Pretty clear what the book is about. Grief makes Christmas complicated. Then my subtitle, which would be the equivalent of the H2, is Finding Hope in the Holidays After the Loss of a Loved One. So based on the title and the subtitle, I know exactly what this book is about. There's no guesswork here, right? I've got another book on my desk that I'm not even going to bring it up because it's bad. It's a theology book that I bought because of the title. And then I started reading the book and I went, nope, the title does not tell me what the book is about. I was misled. It was indexed improperly. We want to make sure that our H1 and our H2 tags really communicate clearly what content is on the pages. So you'll see here I use phrases that people might search, and I'm going to talk about long tail keywords and voice search here in just a few minutes. But also consistently include your church name, your city, and your community name. Your community might not be the same as your city name. Maybe you're in a subdivision or a certain part of your city. Use those consistently in your H2, and you can have multiple H2 tags, maybe 4, 5, 6 on a page. You can also use H3 to flesh that out. Now, one of the questions that I often get when it comes to H1 and H2 tags is, well, all of a sudden I'm using the H1 tags the way you told me to and the H2 tags, and it doesn't look very good because of the font size. Yes, I realize that that is a problem in a lot of cases, especially if you're using a theme for your website where the H1 and the H2 are pre-programmed. If you're in a WordPress website, you can actually have someone who knows how to write CSS or cascading style sheet to give you alternate options for your H1 and your H2 so that it doesn't have to be that ginormous font that wraps 8 times just when you put your church name on there. There are ways to work around it. Google it and YouTube it. You'll find ways to work around that. Let's keep moving. Meta descriptions is another part of your SEO. And again, this is an area that I see a lot of churches miss. They'll create a meta description and it just kind of gets copied from page to page to page. But every page on your website needs to have its own unique meta description that describes the content that's on that page. A lot of times churches won't even fill in the meta description at all. And so what Google does is it pulls the first piece of text that it finds on that page and creates a meta description for it. And you might have seen that if you ever do a Google search, you see the text that comes up under the name of the title of the page. And it's like weird. It doesn't make sense. That's because the church or the business or whoever has the website hasn't written a meta description. One of the ways that I like to look for H1s and meta descriptions on websites is I use a Google Chrome plugin called SEO Meta in One Click. It's a free Chrome plugin. And then when you're on a website, you click the little button and it brings up a window and it will show you your H1s, your H2s, your meta description, the title of your page, and it'll actually highlight in red anything that's a problem that needs to be fixed. If you're using a WordPress website, you might have Yoast on your website. That will essentially do the same thing. But this is just a really quick and easy way to just kind of scroll through the pages on your website and do a quick audit to see which pages might need some updating in the H1 and the H2 and your meta descriptions there. The next thing that impacts our on-page SEO is length of content. In the church world, we went through a thing in the early 2000s where we decided that less was more, and we moved more towards sort of visual and bullet points on our websites, which does make for a better user experience for most people, honestly, because most people are not going to read long content on your website. However, the search engines need the content in order to really understand what's on your page. So having an H1 and an H2 tag that give a title and a subtitle, or a subtitle and a description, and then that content needs to match what is on that page. So if you're Ultra God Kids, which is really City Church Children's Ministry, you want to write enough content on the page that describes and explains what City Church Ministry is. And you want to use, again, that name of your ministry, the name that matches the title, the name of your community, and really flesh it out with more content. If your page doesn't have enough content on it, copy and paste it and throw it in ChatGPT or Claude and say, I want to expand the content on this page for SEO purposes, make some recommendations, and let those AI tools make suggestions on how you can add more content so that you can actually rank better in the search rankings. You can also copy and paste the content from those pages in Claude or ChatGPT and ask it to write meta descriptions for you. Great ideas, great quick ways for you to kind of go through your pages and get some new content for your website that will help with optimization. And finally is internal linking. Most of us have probably been victim of TikTok or YouTube Shorts or Instagram Reels, where you get on the platform and you watch video after video after video after video. And that's the way that those platforms are designed to work. What Google loves is sending someone to a website and discovering that that person visited page after page after page after page. You need to internally link on your website to keep people moving through from one page to another. So for instance, you have a blog page on how to have healthy communication in marriage. And from there, maybe you have a link to your pre-marriage counseling page. And from your pre-marriage counseling page, you might link to another article that you have, which is a free downloadable PDF on, 20 things that you need to talk about before you get married. We want to keep people on the website. When Google crawls and indexes your website, it's looking for the job you've done to try to keep people on your website. And it will reward you with more SEO juice when you have good internal linking on your website. I'm going to keep moving. How do Ring 3 people get to your website? We talked about local SEO and the Ring 2 people searching for a local church. How do Ring 3 people get there? Well, that's going to come primarily through this organic content, which means you need to have an organic strategy that you are optimizing. Obviously, you want to optimize your children's ministry page, your student ministry page, your sermons page, your church online page, all of those things. But another thing that you want to do is you want to be continually adding new content to your website. When your website is static and you're not adding content on a regular basis, you train the search engines that they don't need to crawl your website very often. If you follow Carrie Newhoff or Michael Hyatt or someone who's adding blog content on a regular basis, you might notice if you Google content around the things that they're writing about, their content shows up all the time. They've trained the search engines that because they're adding consequential content to their website on a regular basis, the search engines need to crawl them on a regular basis. Same thing with news websites, ESPN. The search engines are constantly crawling those sites looking for new information. But churches, we build a website and then we don't do anything except add the link to our sermon video every week. And that's the only thing we add. And what happens is the search engines, I'll personify the search engine. I get to the website and I go, I crawled this website 3 months ago and there's a total of 1.8% new content on the website. I think I'll skip it for a year. I'll come back in a year and I'll index again. But if I come onto the website and I say, oh, there's actually, since the last time I crawled, there's actually 18% new content, I'll come back again next month and see if there's more. The best way for you to do this, honestly, is through blog content. If you don't have a blogging strategy in your church, it's the best way for you to add new relevant content. Every church is creating new content every week through sermons. I'm a big fan of repurposing sermons for blog content. I'm also a big fan of leaning into the ministry leaders in your church to help create new content that's relevant for their particular ministries. Now let's talk about a few of those things that might play into your SEO strategy. The first is relevant content. It starts with knowing and understanding your target audience. If you know the people, if you have a persona in your community that you're trying to reach, write content that you think would resonate with those people. Secondly is make it missional. Speak their language. Just like a missionary would, you need to communicate in a way that's relevant to the person that you're communicating with. If it's not, number one, they're not going to read the content. They're not going to stay on the page. Secondly, it's not going to show up in the search results for the things that they're searching for because they're using their language, not your language. And the third thing is make sure that it's helpful. This is really more of a personal preference than anything else. If I look at most church websites, the primary word that I see on there is we. We do this and we have this and we offer this and we believe this. Turn the language around to the person that you're trying to reach. You want to experience this. You have these fears and these concerns. You want to find hope. You want to be a better parent. We're here to help. Try to use you 4 or 5 times as many times as you use the word we. That will actually keep people on your website longer because they'll believe that you get them. Continuing on, optimizing for voice search. I'm going to go through this really quick so that I can stop and we can have some time for Q&A. For voice search, which is becoming more and more popular, and I'm not going to go through all of the statistics, but you get what I'm talking about. Siri, Google Assistant, Alexa, more people are holding the phone to their mouth or speaking to a device rather than typing their search results. My stepfather, this is what he'll do. He'll pick up his phone and he'll say, hey, Siri, how many Whataburger franchises did Patrick Mahomes open during the 2024 offseason from the NFL? Nobody's ever going to type that, but he will say that to his phone. And actually, I'm using that as an example because I actually heard him actually do that search. I thought it was kind of strange, but he talks to Siri as if it's a person. And when we're optimizing our websites, we need to actually be thinking about the way that we're writing content, our H1s and our H2 headings, because people are searching this way now. They're not simply typing in 2 and 3 word searches anymore. They're using long sentences for their searches. So we need to implement natural language and long tail keywords on our website. And we need to create content that answers the questions who, what, where, when, why, and how, right? That's what we need to do because those are the questions that people are asking the search engine. And I'll give you a couple of examples here. Children's ministry page, literally in your H2 headings. What activities does City Church offer for kids? Because that's likely to be something that someone searches. What age groups are included in City Church's children's ministry? When are children's programs held at City Church? If you use those in your H2 and your H3 headings, now those search engines and those voice-activated search engines are trying to match those searches with exactly how you have phrased those things on your website. Marriage ministry page. How can I strengthen my marriage? What marriage workshops does City Church offer? These are the types of things, again, in your H2, your H3 headings, better align with what people are searching for when they're using voice-activated search. There's a couple of other examples here that you can take a look at when you get this copy of this PDF. I co-host a podcast called the Missional Marketing Podcast. It's available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple, or most places that you get a podcast. I host this podcast, co-host it with Jason Hamrock, who is the CEO of Missional Marketing. We talk about all things church marketing and church communications, where it's websites, SEO, Google Ads, you name it. We talk about it. We actually just recorded an episode this last week about church communications during a giving campaign, something that a lot of churches are looking at starting in the new year. So check out our podcast. You can find it online. And my contact, last thing, you can get a free local SEO audit for your church's website, scanning this QR code. If you go to the Missional Marketing website, which is missionalmarketing.com, you'll see a button on the homepage that says do this first. If you do this first, it's actually getting this free local SEO audit. And we'll send you an audit, a PDF that actually shows what your search rankings look like, what your citation profile looks like, and what work needs to be done in order to improve your local search rankings. And that's totally free of charge, no obligation in that. We'd love to just be able to bless you with that. And then finally, my personal contact information is on the last slide here. So if anybody would like to follow up with me, schedule a call, happy to do that. Have any follow-up questions that we don't answer during this Q&A time, I'm happy to connect with you offline.
Super. This is awesome, Bart Blair. So, Bart, just before we get to the Q&A, I just wanted to let people know that not only do you have some great resources, but we also have some great resources as well at streamingchurch.tv. Can you guys see my screen of the different resources
Yes.
we've got on
Yes.
there? Like, we do want to mention dailydive365.com before we get to the Q&A, and that is a lot to do with repurposing your sermon. You can get some daily devotionals done automatically. Just go to dailydive365.com and you get a chance. We have the Church Solutions podcast. We have blogs at blog.streamingchurch.tv. And of course, we have other things like streamingchurch.tv. So those are some things that we offer. And like Bart, our organization, we want to help churches. That's what we're all about. So now I think it would probably be good if we did a little bit of Q&A. So I don't know if Michael or Steve, you want to read some of these questions we've got here?
Sure. I posted some that I'm very curious about. Bart, I go to Home Depot. I go wherever. I leave to Home Depot and it says, "Hey, how was Home Depot? Can you answer a few questions about Home Depot?" And it asked me, do they have parking, all this. How is that? You familiar with that? And how is that information used? And how can my church leverage that information?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I don't know exactly how it's used. I do know that based on you've done a local search, you've probably used a map. It's kind of funny. The other day, I was searching for something in Ireland, and I ended up on Google Map, and I'm looking on the map, and then like the next day, I get a notification saying, "Hey, how was your visit to this place?" I'm like, clearly Google wasn't monitoring my geolocation because I wasn't anywhere near Ireland. I was just visiting that. I think Google's incentive there is to try to get you to leave information on the Google business profile, to leave a review or to take a photo. The honest truth is I really don't know exactly how that is used. And I don't know if there's an intentional way that we can trigger that for our churches. I think one of the key things is, as I said, use your Google business profile and be active in that Google business profile. And I think you're more likely to have Google help you in those areas. If you're using Google's tools, Google will scratch your back. And that's the thing that we've learned over time, is that if Google wants to own the universe, and if you're willing to play in their sandbox, then there are some benefits to that. So I don't know the exact answer to that. That is a good question, but I would just say use your Google business profile. I think that increases your possibilities of getting those types of follow-ups.
I had a rumor along those lines that they were trying to move into Yelp territory and try to build their own little review kind of thing. Anyway,
well, it's interesting. So on that note, so Yelp, I mentioned that as one of the citations. People who are using Apple Maps, the reviews that they see in Apple Maps are Yelp reviews. So it is important for your church to have Yelp reviews, but here's a little word of warning. If you don't have many Google reviews and you blast out an email to everybody in your church tomorrow and say, "Hey, everybody, we need Google reviews. Will you go leave a Google review?" Google is totally fine with that. No problems. I have a pastor friend who's planting a church in New York City, and he gave away free t-shirts to a whole bunch of people who left Google reviews. No problem. If you do the same thing on Yelp, Yelp, because you're not getting regular reviews on Yelp, Yelp will see that as spam, and none of those reviews will actually get posted publicly, and there's nothing you can do to counter that. So you want to ease your way into Yelp when it comes to Yelp reviews. You also just want to make sure that your Yelp profile is actually claimed. So Yelp has probably listed your church. Make sure that you actually go and claim it.
Another question I had has to do with AI. You mentioned, we did this little test thing, and the top answer was Gemini, talking about, how to answer the question. I kind of see us moving from a search-based answer to questions to a more of an AI-based answer to questions. Because
what you'll notice if you scroll to the bottom of that Gemini search, this is what I love about Gemini. Gemini cites its sources. So it lists in its sources Chase Oaks Church, history.com, English Heritage, monastery icons. So the content that Gemini is providing you in that search result, it is pulling from websites that it has crawled, and it's actually citing those sources at the bottom. One of the things I like about Gemini, because you can actually see where it's pulling its content. Now, it may not always write it or arrange it in a way that's 100% accurate. So I always say, be cautious with just copying and pasting AI as it is, especially if you're looking for factual information. But I think right now, while Gemini is definitely different than the Google search engine, Gemini is using the same data, the same data brain that Google has in order to extrapolate a lot of the content that we're getting in those search results.
Yeah, I got a question for you. I was talking to somebody about this webinar coming up and, SEO, and you've talked about SEO, but somebody also mentioned, well, what about SEM, search engine marketing? Is that the same thing, or is there a difference?
It's essentially the same thing. SEM, search engine marketing, is basically leveraging your SEO to get new visitors to your website so that you can sell and serve your products and your services, right? So there's a company called SEM Rush that will run an SEO audit. You have to pay for it, but you can get an audit, an SEO audit of your website, and it basically grades you and tells you how you're doing and shows you what deficiencies you have and areas that you're doing well. And again, that's all part of, search engine marketing. You must be optimized well in order to take advantage of search engine marketing. It's planting the seeds for the long-term orchard growth versus buying ads to get immediate traffic to your website, right? It all kind of works together.
Okay. Here's a question. Where can I get a list of the citation listings my church should be included on?
Well, if you fill out that free audit for your church website that I listed there, you will get a list of the key citations, the most important ones that Google cross-references. Outside of that, you typically have to pay for that list, and it actually, so interesting is that it changes. It's not always static, and it's not always the same from region to region or city to city. So sometimes I will look at these reports for churches and I'll see Apple Maps and Waze on the list. And on other times, I don't see Apple Maps and Waze, at least on the key citations, right? There is some fluctuation and some variation. Sometimes I'll get a list and it'll say Google has 39 key citations. Then I get another report that says there are 41 key citations. So it's a flux with all things with Google and algorithms. There's constant change in what they're doing. There are a handful that never change, which is weird because some of them, like our chief operating officer said, our chief technical officer said, one of these directory listings is literally like some guy in a basement with a database that built a website and has all these directory listings. Like, who is he? Why did he do this? And why does Google consider it to be authoritative? No idea why, but Google does. And since Google does, we have to be in that search listing.
Okay. So I know this webinar was not about Google grants, but can you, in a moment or so, tell people what Google grants are and who's eligible for those things?
Yeah, absolutely. The Google grant is an in-kind marketing offer for any qualifying 501c3 that is not a school or a hospital. So most churches can qualify. You can't qualify as a Christian school. You can't qualify or any kind of academic institution, and you can't qualify if you're a nonprofit in medical. And what Google does is it offers you up to $10,000 a month in Google search advertising. So if you've ever paid for Google search advertising, you go into Google search account, ad account, you say, I want to show up in searches for this list of keywords. I'm willing to spend $100 a month, and Google will then put your ads out every time somebody searches for one of those keywords in the geo-targeted area that you want. What Google does is they allow you with the grant to run the same types of ads. They just don't require you to put a credit card in. They give you a monthly credit limit of $10,000. What Google Grant is good for is that third ring felt need search, high volumes of traffic. There are many more people in your community searching for help with my marriage, help with parenting, help with grief and anxiety than there are people searching for churches. And search volume is the key when it comes to the Google Grant, because there are some impression share limitations and some things that make the Google Grant a little more difficult to leverage if all you're doing is building ad campaigns for people finding your church. But if you have ministries or you have content on your website, for instance, I'm part of a church plant. We are intentionally writing felt need content about marriage and parenting and life purpose and things like that to use the Google Grant for that content, because we're just never going to be able to leverage the money with the Google Grant with purely people searching for churches, because the volume just isn't there. So that felt need content is where you're really going to maximize that Google Grant.
Yeah,
is that helpful?
Yes, very much. Any other questions? I know we've gone a little bit long on the Q&A, but this has been excellent. Any other questions I've missed here, guys?
Not on the list. This third ring component it's fairly new, right? I mean, most churches that were trying to optimize on how to get found for people looking for churches, but this third ring seems like a really good, ripe mission field out into your community. Are churches really effectively using that, or?
And that's the thing, is that, Jesus told us that sometimes we have to leave the 99 to go chase that one lost sheep. The reality is, when we look at the numbers, it's more like we got one in the pen and we got 99 we could go chase. I mean, that's the reality is there are far more lost people in our community, people far from God, than there are who are already in the pen. And I think we have a responsibility to leverage our digital presence to intersect with those people and go find them. Now, when it comes to marketing, the reality is it's a much longer journey to get somebody from a click to a pew. When their felt need is what they were looking for solutions for. Somebody's actively looking for a church and they click on your Google business profile that leads them to your website, they might show up this Sunday. But if I was looking for help with, my infertility, or looking for help with my ornery teenage kid or whatever it was, and I land on an article or a web page on your website, it could be 3 months, 6 months, 3 years before I actually move towards actually an incarnational connection with your church. A lot is going to depend on your marketing strategy as a whole. The website's kind of top of funnel, and depending on how wide that top is, it determines how quickly people move through that funnel to incarnational connection, which is ultimately what we're aiming for. And you guys are, you do video streaming and church streaming, and we consider that online church experience to be part of that funnel. There are very few churches that we work with that would say, we're trying to build an online only platform. A lot of them would say, we see our online platform as a mechanism of starting new relationships with people who don't yet know us, and Lord willing, eventually moving them into some sort of incarnational community where they are being discipled with others in the context of community. And that looks very different in a lot of different contexts. But that's, again, we would see that as part of that funnel.
Okay, good. So look, we're basically running out of time here, but Bart Blair has been our guest today from Missional Marketing. Thank you, Bart, for this wonderful information. It's good stuff for churches.
It's my pleasure. I appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity, and I hope that it's been helpful for those that are hanging out.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, if you've signed up for this webinar, there is a recorded version of this that you'll get in your email. And if somehow or another you snuck in here, or you're watching this recorded months later, you can always reach out to us at support at streamingchurch.tv, and we'll get you information that will get you to Bart, or we'll help you any way we can, because that's what it's all about. So we want to thank everybody for participating today in our webinar, and we wish you well. God bless you guys. Take care of yourself and each other, and we'll catch you next time on another webinar.